Okay, listen, y'all know me. You know me pretty well. You listen to me blab and blab. You know how I feel about marketing. Marketing is absolutely essential. Of course, it's a critical part of your MSP success. But how I feel about people who do marketing is many people, they want to get into marketing because they don't really know what else to do. Okay? And it seems easy to them. And so there's lots of people, there's no barrier to entry. You can just say you're in marketing, you can say you're in digital marketing. And that's why I, in general, am apprehensive towards quote unquote marketing experts. Luckily, today is not one of those days because I got to interview Katie Vreeland from Luminary Creative. Now, Katie's been around forever. She knows the channel inside and out. She's been in the MSP world a lot. She's spent a lot of time now supporting MSP vendors, but you don't know her because she's been hiding behind the scenes from all of us, pulling strings and making things happen. But she's finally out and into the light where she belongs. I'm so excited because today we talked about things that seem so simple to me, and at the same time, she describes them in a very groundbreaking and accessible way. I'm not going to hold you up any further. Let's get into it. Katie, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk with you. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So this is a sales podcast, and we occasionally bring on marketing people like yourselves, mainly because I think sales and marketing really are fusing more and more together. As time goes on, they're really more and more, actually, I think they're the same function in many ways. There might be some different motions, but marketing and sales it's not two different camps. And I think that one job, the salesperson can learn a lot from the marketing person and vice versa. But you and I had this conversation. We met up at a conference not too long ago. We were talking about the MSP sales landscape in general. And I want to hear from you just a little bit on your take. Let me say it this way. Give me a little bit of your history in the channel for those who might not know who you are and some of what you've done thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have worked with startups ever since 2007, 2008. Really early on, I started out with Amazon, then went to Avalara out in Seattle when they were before 50 people. So that was pretty intense at that time. Mainly, I have been with startups or with MSPs doing marketing, doing sales for probably 16 years. I took about a year break in there just to have kids and be around them and spend time and deal with life. And then came back into this channel after my MSP and fell in love completely again with all of it, with the sales, with the SaaS side, with the selling, and seeing how much of a community it is.
Yeah. Have you noticed any differences or similarities that surprised you in the MSP channel versus just like a more traditional SaaS business?
Yeah, so the MSP channel, we are very, very much more peer focused. Like we go to our peers in the channel to get reviews on everything, to ask questions, to have advisors, partners, mentors. We are so community focused. When out in the SaaS world, it's really like you're just doing a hustle and burn and you're trying to grow something as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. And it's really a grind without really looking around or having others to rely on. Because all your focus goes into this product and how to make it successful as fast as possible.
Right.
Here, a lot of people really start to rely on each other, especially on the SaaS side, knowing how grueling the travel can be, how long the days are. Mm-hmm. And if you're on the MSP side as well. I mean, those days are so long.
Right. It's crazy, isn't it? Like we were just interviewing a VP of sales from another company who had come up in SaaS, and we were having a similar conversation that the managed service industry is so much more peer focused. But what I like about, especially in the sales and marketing motion in managed services, is it's not so much as everybody in their own swim lanes. There's a lot more collaboration, I feel like, across the entire like RevOps teams in managed services, just because everybody's just more involved. They're more involved in the product, and then they know their customers more. And sometimes in the SaaS world, that it gets a little bit more siloed. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
love selling in this industry
absolutely.
for that reason.
I think about it on the managed service side. If you're an MSP, you are a problem solver. That is your job. You're there to solve problems, to fix things, to make things run smooth. And even in like everyday life, we're constantly on Reddit looking for things to answer, asking our own questions. We rely on our peers because so much of that problem solving is also learning and educating ourselves so we can tackle more problems. And I think on the MSP side, that's so, so huge that when you get to the SaaS side and you see the other part of it, where it's like, okay, build, like sell, you kind of get stuck forgetting that they're really just problem solvers trying to make the days go by easier for everyone.
Right.
And that's what I really love. I love the community part. And I feel like the SaaS side, I feel like the vendor side of our channel has really started motioning towards, kind of cohabitating with these MSPs and really getting into their communities and their groups.
Yeah.
And hopefully more so on the way.
Right. One of the things that drew me to you when we met, we met on LinkedIn, just like everybody else. Like we met on LinkedIn and then we met at a conference. And I talked to, as you would imagine, I talked to a lot of marketing people in the channel. I mean, I guess probably so do you. To the point where I know 80% of them, right? You probably know 90+% of them. And a lot of really great folks. But I'm going to say, how do I say this diplomatically? There's a lot of really talented, well-intentioned people who are putting out a lot of effort, but I would say not having a particularly positive impact on the results for their clients when we're talking about in the MSP channel. There's a lot of marketing efforts that people will try to pull over from historical or like vestigial practices from SaaS or from some other vertical that doesn't seem to apply in managed services. And like a lot of MSPs will just sort of start whimpering and whining, like whenever you talk about, because they tried something and it didn't work. And then they just make this blanket statement that marketing doesn't work for IT. Obviously, you and I both know that's not the case, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts you can share on, I don't know, the state of that. Why is that such a trend that people who are coming over, who they have skills, they have pedigree, they have experience, they've had results, but then they're put together a product or something and the MSPs are not getting anything out of it. Any thoughts there?
Yeah. So I think the MSP side's so interesting because they have so many different trends. It is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
There are constantly new things that MSPs are looking at or focusing on. And if you think about it, like so many of them are in these peer groups where they have different focuses and they have other influences. So going in and really asking the questions first as a marketer to figure out like, hey, what are you guys interested in? What are you hearing from people? Where's your niche? Like, what are you seeing changing? And being able to build some sort of marketing around that actually fits them rather than just taking something that's worked in the past, slapping it on and being like, well, we don't even know if that's going to work for their ICP. We don't know if it's going to work for what their message is and their actual brand. I think people forget that there's such a human side to it.
Yeah.
And that it constantly evolves, that you really have to be in there asking questions and asking some, not necessarily personal, but digging a little bit deeper than what's your ICP?
Yeah.
What do you sell?
Right.
Yeah.
Because the data is important. Any marketer that like refuses to leverage or supply any data is probably hiding. Right.
Yeah.
But on the opposite side of that, any marketer who tries to reduce your entire brand identity down into data is probably not going to help you make an impact in your community.
Yep. There has to be it has to have equal sides.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you ask anyone I've worked with in the channel, I'm extremely data heavy and I'm very strict on it and I drive people crazy with it, but the numbers are going to tell me where we need to go. My whole job as a marketer is just to support sales and make their job easier, get half the sale done for them so they can just talk them through it. But if we don't have the data, if we're choosing not to collect accurate data, if we're kind of hiding it, well, I don't know what I'm supposed to do in a quarter or next year at this time. And if I'm only relying on data, well, then I'm not going to look at the human side of it and the elements of feeling and what's going on around us. I think it's really important to have an equal balance of both.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
What can an MSP owner do? Like, we know that they're not marketers. Oftentimes they don't want to be marketers. It's fine. We're not gonna, they are who they are. And they might hire somebody like you, or they might hire a lead gen agency or something. But we all know that the owner, they can't just completely ignore all of their front end of their business. They can't just be a technician that solves problems, right? Like, whether it's the business's brand or the lead generation, the demand generation, the overall awareness, whatever it is. What can an owner do on the personal side, whether they're working with a marketer or not, to increase the likelihood of their marketing success?
Yeah. And I think that is really almost putting themselves out there.
Okay.
MSPs, like their owners, their founders, just don't have time. Like that's one of the biggest things in an MSP is you barely have time to do your job as well as check on the other things, especially if you're also stepping in for techs, all of it. It's to find the time to really work on your personal brand so you can be out there, see and hear what's going on, have people start recognizing you, as well as going out and just seeing what the different trends are, what the different marketing is that you're seeing. It can be when you're just sitting down at night and scrolling through whatever, like what catches your eye? Why did you stop on that? Like take a second to think about it and make a note. So then when you do go back or you do have a marketer, or you are talking to an agency, you give them these ideas and be like, oh, this is what caught my eye. Yeah. It's like, well, that's really important to know. Yeah.
I love that. It's such a good piece of advice that if you're going to be scrolling, it's like writers and directors, they watch movies through a totally different lens because they're going, wow, look at how they hid that exposition. Oh, wow, look at how they told that, like, look at how they shot that or got coverage of this like thing that they probably had to do 50 times in a row because they're looking at it a different way. And marketers, they see advertisement a totally different way because they're going, wow, look at how they did this. Look at how they specialized this towards this psychographic. But this is a really good advice for any MSP owners listening. When you stop on a piece of marketing, become aware. Just put in 1 second of pause. Why did you stop? Notice that you stopped, why you stopped. Open a voice memo and say, I stopped at this thing. This is what I was doing. It caught my attention. And just start collecting those moments because you're right. That's the beginnings of potentially could be some really powerful insights.
Yeah, I just take screenshots. I have folders just full of screenshots of ads or posts online that I see, anything that just catches my eye. And I have to think about, okay, why did it? Like, was it the font? Was it the message? Is it just a pretty picture? And sometimes it's not always good why it caught my eye, but sometimes it still works. I mean, there's all these different ways that something can grab you and you can find like, oh, that's something I should really look into. And maybe I should understand why I felt that way or why it stopped me. Really just like looking back on yourself and seeing like, how is marketing working on you? Because we never think about it. It's just ingrained in us to buy an Apple Watch or your MacBook or whatever, just because we see that it's there.
Right.
Well, that's what we kind of want to train companies or businesses to do when they see an MSP's name or a SaaS vendor's name.
And equally, you have to ask, like, look at the marketing that you're putting out and you have to look at it and say, would this catch my attention?
Yeah.
And if it would,
you have to be critical.
Yeah. If you're just going, well, it was cheap or this vendor gave it to me, so I'm just going to use it because all marketing is good marketing. Well, that's not true. And if it's catching nobody's eye, it does nothing. If it looks tacky, then it actually could be hurting the brand, which is actually, I want to circle back to that because you made a comment in there that you snuck in that I think we should extrapolate on. The MSP owner can be concentrating on their personal brand. Talk more about that for a minute.
Yeah, our whole channel they thrive on LinkedIn and Reddit. Having your own brand out there where people see, like, okay, you're the founder, CEO, whatever it is of your MSP, seeing that you're putting your thoughts out there, you're putting out things that are important to you,
Hmm.
writing about it, communicating with people online. It really shows people that you're out there, you're trying, you're working, you're also getting in front of so many people. And I think a lot of people that aren't social media people, I'm not. Like, I just have a LinkedIn and Reddit, and I don't use the other stuff because things are wild
Yeah.
online. But it's not like a social media thing. Like, you're expanding your reach where other people might put a keyword into Google later, and then later on it's going to come up with your company on LinkedIn just from something someone did earlier,
Right.
some sort of retargeting. I think it's so important to show people that you're there. This is what you own. Here are your thoughts,
Yeah.
to see even if your own personal thoughts and mine as a consumer are going to blend together, or if I find it interesting, if I like your way of business.
Right. And this is sort of a maybe a silly question. This might be the marketing equivalent of the question, sell me this pen. But the question is, what is a personal brand?
Yeah, a personal brand. So I mentor people in the space coming into marketing or coming into the tech space. And I always tell them your personal brand is how your future boss sees you, how a future college, how a future spouse might see you. It's really how you present yourself.
Mm.
It's all the information that you put out there about yourself, the things that you believe in, the things that you say that you know, the things that you disagree with, the way that you view
Mm.
other things going on in society. Like, that's all part of your brand.
Yeah.
Some people, when we have a consulting or a company that is our brand, we go a little bit harder into it and we put our colors and we put our fonts, but it doesn't have to be that intense.
Yeah.
It can just be putting your thoughts out there and staying consistent, because you want your potential clients to know where you stand
Yeah.
and where you stand for your company. It's really just how the world views you.
Right. Right. It Yeah. I love that you just said that. And my favorite thing about your answer is that you didn't start with a list of everything that the personal brand is not. Because you know what I'm talking about. Like, whenever you're like, what
Yeah.
is brand? And then marketers are just like, well, what is brand? Brand is not a logo. Brand is not your colors. It's like, okay, honey, but what is it? That's what I
Yeah.
asked you, because it's very difficult to articulate. And I think you just did it
Mm-hmm.
very well in a way that we can actually do something with. Your brand is, like, my definition of brand is personality plus perceived value. That's the way I like to think of the brand of my company. What do people think I'm going to give them? And then how does my personality interlace with it? Because, as you said, like, people don't just want to work with people who can help them. They want to work with people who can help them, who they also will jive with.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
so prevalent. That's why virtue signaling is now such a huge part of our culture, right? And, like, companies all have to take
Mm-hmm.
stances on political issues, which is kind of crazy. Like, if you zoom out and realize
Yeah.
companies aren't people. Um, so why do they don't vote? So why do they have an opinion on who should be president? It's because they have to position their
Yep.
perceived personality. They have to position who would like them, who won't like them, what they stand for. That's just kind of the age that we're in. And you don't have to go there. You don't have to become political. I please, for God's
Right.
sakes, don't.
Yeah. Don't.
But you do have to
Yeah.
really share a part of yourself with your potential audience in order for them to have a sense of connection with you, right? I mean, any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah. It almost comes back to, it's like morals, especially when we go back to thinking about companies that share the political views. It's like, okay, does that company's stance follow my morals? Do I want to be associated? That's how we think about it that way. Like, is that something I want to say I like after they did that? The company has to really think about that. But when we're just a person and we're talking and we're putting things out there, um, we have to show where we stand, and we have to be very strong on it.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to share how I feel about marketing, messaging, sales, a process, like, I need to know what I'm talking about and I need to stand tall on it, even if someone disagrees, which is fine because that's how we learn. Like, that's what we want. We want the conversation. But it also shows people like, I'm approachable.
Yeah.
Like, at a show, come up and talk to me about this. I would love to.
Yeah.
And I think that's also where, if you're at a show and you have a sales guy that you meet there and you're buying and you just click with him because of his personality, because you might have seen something before, that sales guy's way more likely to close that.
Right.
Because the sale gets along. I think it's just so important for anyone at a company where they want to grow and they believe what they're selling to have some sort of personal brand out there on LinkedIn and be able to speak to it and be able to sell to it. I think it's such an easy, free thing to do that takes a couple hours a week that can make incredible changes in the reach you have.
Yeah. Let's talk about those couple hours a week. What are some of the practical outlets or actions that somebody could take if they're saying, everybody's saying I got to get a brand? Okay, what do I do? Do they just start writing big long posts of their statements of belief? Or what are some things that an MSP owner who wants to build a brand and build a digital identity do?
Yeah. I think the main thing is take time, especially when you're starting out. Take time and just go through LinkedIn or go through Reddit or whatever you like to read and take note of the things that catch your eye, that you really understand and believe in, that you feel like you have an opinion on, and save those. I would go through and connect with a bunch of people on LinkedIn, people that you know, companies you know, other MSPs that you follow and owners. And then as you build up that list and you build up these followers and you start getting these connections and familiarity, start writing about an article that you saw and why it caught your eye. And you don't need to write something long and huge. It only needs to be a couple sentences just to get your point across, and start sharing.
Yeah.
And start putting things out there. It's just being consistent with it. And that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
The hardest part is doing it 2 to 4 times a week, every week, and setting aside time, because it doesn't happen immediately. You don't see results immediately. It takes weeks to months.
Yeah.
But the payoff is huge. But right away, it's really hard to be like, okay, if I'm taking these hours where I could be doing this to bring me X ROI, why am I writing or looking at LinkedIn?
Right.
Like, it just doesn't jive. But as you continue to do it, it absolutely does. And you're presented with way more opportunities. You get podcasts, you get webinars, you get invites to things as a speaker.
Right.
So it actually, in the end, saves you quite a bit of money. And it gives you just so much authority, I would say.
And it's the secret sauce, isn't it? That like the thing that's going to make your marketing take off is not AI. It's your personal brand. Because marketing that is hollow or devoid of personality is like inherently less empathetic, and meaning nobody feels any connection to it. Right.
Right.
And just plastering your logo every single day and saying, this is my logo, this is my logo, this is my logo. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about applying, how can they build a connection? How can they, if they meet you at a conference, go, oh, hey, it's you, and come up to you, right? Now, you and I, Katie, had that experience. We met each other, we're like, oh my gosh, finally we're meeting. Because we both had a relationship with one another's personal brand, right?
Yeah.
Which is also why it's so important, if you think about it, that your personal brand is an accurate representation of you, because you can't just put out there what you want, what you think people want to see.
Yes.
That's a terrible way to make friends. It's a terrible way to, you know what I mean? Like, that's not how bands rise to the number one. They don't just say, what do people want to hear? They say, what is our story? What is our sound? And then they trust that the people who are on that same frequency are going to find them and follow them. And that's how creatives in general find audiences, is they make the most true version of themselves, and then they have to vulnerably present it. Versus, I've done a bunch of data, people like to hear about these topics, so I'm going to amalgamize all of these things that are topical and then try to parrot them in, you know what I mean? Like, you can always tell the difference.
Yeah, like what you said, I mean, you have to be okay with getting vulnerable.
Yeah.
I make posts on there that are can sometimes be very personable or personal, but I'm being vulnerable. I'm putting that side of myself out there, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I need to be okay with that. But it's how other people can relate to me. You know, like, oh, you have two teenagers, so do I.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like, you're out there working in this space for that long. You have to be okay with putting yourself out there, because if I'm just saying what I think should work when it comes to marketing and sales, like, why should anyone care if they don't actually know who I am or why I'm saying that or why I have a strong stance on having a personal brand or being consistent or keeping data? They need to know you a little bit. And I think our channel is very, very good at being vulnerable.
Yeah.
We kind of push it, especially with peer groups. We kind of make people be vulnerable and be okay with being open. And I've definitely seen leaps and bounds with that changing and people opening up more over the last few years. But you have to put out there a little bit of your personal self and your personal story and tie it in with these things.
Right. Because there's difference between being personal or vulnerable with your peers versus vulnerable with your prospects. Like,
yes,
you have to transfer that over. You can't just have this veneer of professionalism, which is just like, in some ways, sometimes the word professional, I think, is a synonym for insecure. Like, we put on a character because we don't feel confident. So we put on a character when we're interfacing with somebody because we don't have the skills or tools or experience in a sales motion. So then we act super formal and we get rigid, and they don't feel connected to us. And they go, yeah, we just didn't really vibe with those guys. You know what I mean? And we masked, we suffocated all of our connection opportunity by trying to be too stale, too sterile, too professional. So it's got to cross back over, right? But is there a clear distinction between, shall I say, like, can you be professional and vulnerable at the same time? And how do you tell the difference between being vulnerable versus just oversharing?
Yeah, I think it definitely, I think for being vulnerable in a professional setting is when you're really just kind of scratching the surface of your personal life. Like, we know I'm 36, 2 kids, single mom in Minnesota. Like, that is what a lot of people know of me. I've been in this space. Those are really the only things I share about me personally. And I'm fine with digging into those, but I'm not going off and talking to prospects and things about like what I'm doing on weekends if I go out or vacations. I'm just sharing those key morals and things that are important to me, which are my kids and my job and what I do. Minnesota just comes in because I have an accent. So I think you have to really know what you're comfortable with sharing and then have a boundary. There's a lot of missing the boundary that seems to pop up sometimes, especially with posting photos on LinkedIn and how we talk. I think you really have to have your boundary and know, like, that's that. You could talk about your kids, you can share a little bit, but you just want to show you're a real person. I'm not someone that's just here putting stuff out online just so I can make the next sale.
Right.
Like, you have to be able to connect with someone or find something, ask questions and find commonalities.
Yeah.
When you're talking to prospects and clients. And even that's the discovery question. So if I'm doing case studies or if I'm supporting sales and I'm having a conversation, I'm asking them questions. I want to know everything. So I want to know how I can relate.
Yeah.
So I can use that later on so I can help support the sale. I think those type of things are very important, but it's never digging too much. That's definitely a thing that happens in our space, but there are some people that are really good at it.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. Spending a few hours a week scrolling, seeing what's connecting, finding what the community is talking about, what your prospects are talking about. And that's another one, is like, don't get stuck in the echo chamber of what other MSPs are talking about. You don't sell to MSPs.
Right.
Go to where your customers are. Go to where your prospects are. Listen to them. And what are the topics that matter to them? We have a lot of hot button issues, I'll say, or there's a lot of sort of playful controversies within our space, right? Like, some people are certain PSAs, like it's almost like our sports teams. Like everybody has this like sort of playful little opinion and they sort of camp around their PSA.
Yep.
But your prospect doesn't care if if you love Kaseya or hate Kaseya or love Kanekwa.
Right.
It's completely irrelevant, right? But for example, I'll give you one of these talking points I think is really effective. An MSP I've worked with, they're a cloud, tons of data center space, but the owner is like really strong, and he's like, Mac is more secure than PC, and I can prove it. And he has a full technical theory about this, but he doesn't get into the technicals of like why Microsoft is intrinsically porous and why blah, 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 and why there's human error is a lot more likely in Microsoft situations and for 0-day threats and stuff like that. But he's got all this branding, all this like material out there for prospects. It's like, yeah, an IT guy who doesn't hate Mac because it's better. Now that's super controversial. And whenever you take a stance, like if you take no stances, everybody will love you, right? No, if you take no stances, nobody likes you. If you take some stances, some people like you. And so it's way more effective, right? You can't say nothing. You can't be nothing. You can't be everything to everyone. So for example, he's like, we believe Mac is more secure than Windows. And some companies, they flock to him because they're like, finally, somebody who's not going to like try to shame me and call me a hippie snowflake creative because I want to use a Mac environment. You know what I mean? But finding those issues or those like topics that you can take a strong contrarian stance on, and then building your personal brand around those positions.
Yep. I think it's extremely important. And especially with, you have your stance, but then how are you going to talk to people? Because we know a lot of our MSP owners, very technical, but we have both the emotional buyer and the technical buyer. We kind of get stuck in talking technical to people because it's what we know. It's just second nature. It comes easy, giving, stats, everything. But the people that are buying the services aren't necessarily technical. Like they're coming to you for support for the technical things.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, how do you take what you're so strongly believing in, and you have all this data and you have all these things to back it up, and then how do you also change that so you can market it and sell it to just an emotional buyer, which is the person that might be the creative, that would be me, that just wants to use a Mac because that's what I've always used.
Yeah.
And like, how would you sell that? And I think it's so important for someone like you're talking about, that he was able to do it both ways. That's such a strong skill that is so missed right now.
Yeah. 100%. Is there anything else on this topic that we really need to make sure we express? I want the listener to be able to glean some real ideas out of this. Spend a few hours a week, review what other people are doing, find those sort of controversial issues that are relevant to your prospects, and take strong stances, and communicate them kindly but clearly, right? Like almost my entire brand is built on anti-FUD. That's kind of my entire identity as a salesperson. Like FUD, I think is like, I vehemently oppose selling IT using fear. And the truth is that everybody does it because they don't know how else to do it. And so guess what? Not everybody likes me because a lot of people love FUD because it's freaking easy. That's why they use it.
Yeah. It's just the first thing that they know to go to is just fear-based selling. This is something that's important to me because I have to step in often, especially after we have, any big breaches like Vegas last year, being out at MGM during all that, and then getting messages from, MSPs and vendors that both want to use this as a selling tactic. And it's like, one, you can't, because you're really taking advantage of people's, situations they're going through. Also, when this wears off and they don't see that someone's trying to hack into them in 3 months from now, like we're saying is going to happen, like, are they going to churn? Or can you give them some sort of other information
Yeah.
that can make them feel secure, explain why it's so important, explain why it's important to, have the cyber insurance, get liability. Like, what are the other things we can do rather than just trying to scare them so they come spend money?
Right.
That's huge for me. I feel like it's very unfair, but it does work on a certain subset. I think really like the biggest thing is just go and explore, find your niche. When I was at my MSP, our niche was senior living facilities. And we would go to the shows, we would see where they were all located, we would be part of, all their news sites, everything going on. Like, we want to know what the big issues are. What are the issues that they're talking about in Congress when it comes to the care for elders? We want to know everything. So if I can share something about that, if I can promote or stand behind something, I want to be able to do that and to write about it and share why it's important. And then especially when you go to shows, you want to be able to have the conversations too about things going on in that niche of that type of community. Like, you have to find your home, find your niche, and really dive in really, really deep. And it's so, so important to figure out your niche and just live in it.
Yeah, 100%. Find your niche, build your brand, show up. Are there any controversial stances? Are there any hot takes that Katie Vreeland has that MSPs might know you for? Any that you and what you do, other than it sounds like you agree with me on the FUD thing?
I definitely agree with you on FUD. I'm very big on start tracking your data extremely early. If you don't have your HubSpot figured out and you're figuring out sources of where people are coming from when they find you, like, figure it out now. If I come in and help you, that's the first thing we're going to look at, because that's where you know where your money needs to be focused and your marketing and your sales guys need to be start looking at. I'm so strong on data. Like, we have to have it.
Yeah.
And really just strong on just always show up. Like, be there. If you're going to be at a show, if you're going to be at a meeting, if you're going to come talk to a group of people, like, show up. Don't show up and just be like, oh, okay, now I have to do that. Like, show up and be there and be grateful and have the conversations. We are so lucky to be a part of this type of community in this industry, especially one that is just so community focused. I get so bothered when people take it for granted, because it's just so incredible that we get to be here working.
Yeah.
And supporting the people that are supporting everybody else out there so they can do their jobs. Like, be grateful and show up for them and help them. Not everything has to be pushing a sale at that moment.
Yeah.
Figure out how you can step in, figure out how you can support the rest of the community, or if there's just something you can look at doing or volunteering, anything. I think it's really important. Really, really important.
It's so great. You're an asset, Katie, to the community, and I sincerely mean that. Before we go, do you want to just tell us for a second what you're doing with Luminary and how you might want to what you're doing for the channel?
Absolutely. So I have Luminary Creative. Currently, right now, I am working as fractional CMO for a lot of the SaaS companies. I also go in and I just support the marketing teams that are there in case they need to have extra hands on a project. If they're looking for ways to complete a campaign, I'm able to come in and just have conversations and help them along. I also work with MSPs on just getting their marketing all together so it can just kind of run. And then pretty soon I will be starting cohorts for MSPs to join once a week for an hour, learn the marketing, get things to walk away with, meet up the next week. So you can just build up your marketing by doing it pretty much an hour a week with me.
Cool.
So find me on LinkedIn, Katie Vreeland, or on my website, luminarycreative.co.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for doing this and talking about branding. For the first conversation I've ever had about personal branding where I didn't roll my eyes. And that's pretty cool.
It's so important. It's such a huge thing. It's how you view me. It's how I view you.
Yeah. It's why we know each other. It's why you're on the podcast. So it works. It works if you work it.
That's
yeah.
right.
Thanks again, Katie, for everything.
Awesome. Thank you.